Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another videos, another paid request. It's time for Phil. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos or topics, reactions, commentaries, reviews, re-reviews, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for the 1976 film Logan's Run, which I didn't grow up with, but I remember seeing once. This is my second time watching it. And overall, I liked it. It has its flaws, but I did like it. I liked a lot of its aesthetics and look. Definitely has that old school 70s look because it was 70s. And this is before Star Wars, before that stuff. Michael York plays the lead here. It takes place in the 23rd century, where society lives in this domed city. And because of overpopulation and all the stuff that happened back then, they have this thing where your life will end when you reach the age of 30. And anyone who is born, they'll put this light in their hand, kind of show their life cycle. The whole point is that apparently everyone's been led to believe that once your time's up, you go to Carousel, you go to get reborn, renewed, where they make it this kind of ritual of renewal, this celebration where the people put on these white masks and then they start floating up, and then this laser starts shooting and you see these sparks fly up when people get hit, and people cheer because that means you don't get renewed, reincarnated, reborn. Because that way it keeps the population in control with food, everything in between. But before that time, you just have all pleasure and no work. There's no work, just complete pleasure, relaxation, do pretty much anything you want, all sorts of stuff. I thought that was interesting. I thought the premise was interesting. Sadly, with how people believe in stuff, I just see a time when so much other stuff has been destroyed information-wise, they would believe in stuff like that. People think it's ridiculous or silly. I mean, think about the stuff you believe in, and then because someone threw out a false rumor, people go, oh, yep, that must be true. The world is flat. There was never, ever, ever dinosaurs, all this other stuff. That just, when it keep going, then who knows what they'll believe next month. So, I like the look of the miniatures. I mean, you could tell they're miniatures. Does this film... I like the look of it in terms of the costumes and the set design within the Dome City. But it looks extravagant, but at the same time, the film does look cheap at times, too. I do kind of wish they had the Star Wars... You would see a year later, the flourish of their effects. Because there are times where that low budget kind of hurts it. I'm surprised this film never got remade. I'm actually rather surprised. Because even if you've never seen the film, there are people that recognize the name Logan's Run. It seems like, okay, it could have a little bit of satire, a little bit of... whether on the nose or not, about the world of today, whether it be misinformation, whether it be overpopulation, whether it be anything in between, the control of governments over society, or in this case, this computer. When it starts in the chase, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Total Recall, although I would put Total Recall above this. Although I still like this a lot more than the Total Recall remake. That's the thing, they should. If you don't do a remake, don't do a remake of Total Recall. Do a remake of this. Although they could still screw that up and this be better. Now, Michael York plays Logan, who is one of the... what did they call him? I forget what they called their group. They hunt runners. People that don't want to be part of the celebration... Pretty much people that don't buy into the system, that think, no, we're not going to get renewed. they run for it. And so Michael York and his partner, his buddy, they go and try to find these runners. And they take joy and satisfaction because it's such a state of affairs with this society that they don't really think how we think. Like later on, someone goes, "Why did you kill that person?" And he goes, "Kill? Why you use that word? We terminate runners." And he thinks nothing wrong with it. He thinks it's completely different things. That's it. I felt, despite some of his low budget deficiencies, I felt like I was in this other world. It felt like, okay, the movie took me to this different world with these different crazy ideals. And that's how, they just can't understand it. Why these people run? They could have been reborn. What are they doing? And it's all about pleasure. It's all about selfishness and pleasure. They get concubines if they want. And so, like, they're having fun with runners and scare them and shoot them by their feet until the guy, like, jumps off and falls to his death. Why do they run? They need to be renewed. Oh, it's time for a cleanup, and then someone comes by and they put something on the body, and the fucking body melts to nothing. I forgot how fucking violent that was. Until ultimately one day, Logan's called into the computer and is given an assignment because he found this Ankh, this symbol, which is a symbol for sanctuary, which supposedly is this place where supposedly over 1,000 runners have been unaccounted for. Now, I do think this bit could have been done a bit better, a lot more depth, a lot more emotional palette, where somehow throughout this questioning, Logan realizes, wait a minute, like, the 1,000 unaccounted for, that can't be. And wait a minute, nobody's ever been renewed? And then his signal on his hand, his life has been shortened. He said, wait a minute, I had 4 more years. And, selfishly, but realistically, he's like, well, now I'm on the chopping block, now I'm going to try to find a way to get the fuck out. But like I said, the reason it reminded me a bit of Total Recall is that a person trying to be put into a group and say that you're one of them in order to go undercover and find this secret group so that we could go in and destroy them. Kind of like how you find out ultimately Arnold was undercover to go into his mutant group and find the resistance and fuck them over. But in reality, he, granted in different ways, there's a very slim connection. But when the chases on, it did remind me a little bit of Total Recall. But I wish in that scene there was a lot more emotional palette of this realization of, wait a minute, nobody's been renewed, so is renewal bullshit or not? And this crisis of faith, crisis of what you believed all along could have been a complete utter lie. I do think there's a lot more stuff that could have been milked out of it, so to speak. And also, when I said some of the effects could be lacking, like he has a gun, and when he shoots, no lasers or nothing come out. He kind of shoots, and when he shoots, the gun has like a spark thing, and then you cut to the person, and then they get a spark kind of squib on them that they explodes and they react. But it's kind of like he's doing this, and it feels like he's got a sparkler gun, or like a glorified taser. You know those tasers you do, and the zzz, you see it there. That kind of. It feels like you're just shooting a glorified version of that, and sometimes it comes off a bit clunky. Especially when the next year you would see the blasters in Star Wars, and you see the lasers come out, and they just look bigger budget. They just look more satisfying. then the guy's shooting, but nothing comes out except these little sparks. It just, it makes it feel more low budget. Same with, I like the miniatures, but you can tell they're miniatures of the Dome City. Later on, there's this ice cave they go through, and there's this robot named Box. And you can tell he can barely move because he's kind of, there's no fluidity. And as he moves, like some of his body goes here, but not the whole body goes there. At one point, there's some action happens and some stuff is fallen, and you can tell it's like, I don't know what effect they used, but you could tell they were not in the same room as the snow falling. Because they're there, but then all this stuff's falling down. You could tell that the people in this are not in the same universe, in the same frame, in the same vicinity. It just looks really awkward and really bad. So, it especially hurts in comparison that, again, a year later you would have Star Wars. And just 3 years later, you look at Alien. You looked at the way that looks, at the creature, xenomorph, and the way those shots are. So, just a few years later, you got Star Wars and Aliens, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. When you see this stuff, even Star Trek the Motion Picture, just in the matter of a couple years, this looks much more antiquated compared to that in terms of some of the effects. But yeah, some of them was charming. Like I said, I like the costumes and the design and of the inside Dome City. There's a bit where you could get plastic surgery called the New You and change your face. And so Logan tries to do it, but then I just like, not only can they cut you, but they could also heal you. But then they try to kill him, and he gets the comeuppance onto them. I would just say some pretty deadly plastic surgery. I didn't mind the way that looked. I won't go into detail to spoil it, but I didn't mind that scene. Like I said, you do wish that they would have had some of the people who did those films I talked about later working on this, or maybe a little bit more flourish of a budget. And like I said, also a little bit more dynamic plot development where, like I said, Logan realizing all he'd been told might have been a lie, crisis of faith, like little. I think Michael York could have been capable of acting those moments. I wish they would give him the opportunity. But the movie goes at a pretty good pace. I mean, you get the establishment of this society, the establishment of this Dome City. Like I said, the whole ritual of them floating up and the celebration, people cheering. That's kind of a weird, quirky, almost kind of creepy sequence. I don't know why. I think just how people are so low. They just believed in it so much in this. They're celebrating when they're watching people die, but it's like they're so sure that they're going to get renewed and reborn that they just go along with it. The third act, it kind of heavy spoilers. Like I said, they're during the chase. There's a bit of a flood they get a part of. Then they go through this whole ice cave with this robot named Box, which I guess people tried to escape, but then he grabbed them and put them in refrigeration, kind of like for food or whatever. Now I thought it was going to be like Soylent Green, but it doesn't go that far. At least, from what I understand, it didn't. It just, people are frozen in time, so to speak. And they make it to the outside, and they just don't know anything about the outside. They don't know what a sun is. They don't know what cats are. They don't know anything. And they find an old guy. And it does sell you the illusion of these are people that didn't know anything about old age. No one lived over 30, so they don't know those lines on your face, do they hurt? And what is that thing on your face? What is a beard? Like, Michael York and Jenny Agutter, actually, who is in American Wolf in London as the love interest to our, and what, nurse? Doctor Nurse? The love interest to our main guy. I thought they worked well for what they needed to do. And they didn't. They really sold this kind of confusion of not knowing what any of this is. And I think for the low budget, or maybe it was a low budget, but for the time, like the way they made DC look decimated and filled with plant life, like they see the Lincoln Memorial, the Capitol building, and I think it's like matte paintings. I miss matte paintings. I do. There's a certain charm to them that you just, yeah, you just CGI it, of course, but matte paintings just has a certain look charm to it that I do miss. Call it nostalgic, call it whatever you want to call it. And they find an old person, and they're so fascinated by him. It's like, well, wait a minute, we just show this as proof that you can get older, and our signals and our lights are gone, so we don't have to be worried, we don't have to be controlled. And his buddy has been chasing him all along, and they get a little fight. Now, the fight could have been a bit more competently choreographed. I guess it's not that bad. Just something about it was... maybe the way they punch is like you need someone who's a little bit... I don't know. Maybe I'm just comparing to today. It was a complete difference of how they do fight scenes. Or maybe because most are loading this his ass to until he does one or two things and stops his friend. And even like the finale, not too bad, but again, spoilers. Pretty much they go back, they ask him where Sanctuary is, and like they put this thing on his head and they're like seeing his thoughts. But the way it's done is a little bit corny, because they'll see like a 3D version of Michael York, and he's saying, "There is no sanctuary." Like, that makes it seem a bit goofy to have him taught that way, because they're trying to break his mind. He's fighting it, so this, it just comes out a little bit more corny than it should. Like, maybe if it was done more with editing and just him yelling normally, you know, there is no sanctuary, there is no renewal, like all this stuff, like, maybe that would work better. And then he's able to defeat pretty easily. Just pretty much get a gun, shoot a couple computer monitors, a couple of his fellow brethren. And that's really all it needed to take. Like, just... the computer got overloaded and he shoots a couple monitors and that's it. It didn't take a whole lot to defeat this thing. And then the old guy showed up and everybody just went to him and they just accepted it. And then the movie was over. So I'm like, wow, okay. That wasn't too hard. So I do like Logan's Run. Like I said, I do like that 70s look aesthetic. Like I said, the settings, I do like some of the ideas of the plot. I do like its ambition. Maybe that's what I appreciate, its ambition. I do think the budget at times fails it, or I don't know if it was the budget or the people making it. Maybe they did have a high budget. They just had some people that didn't know what they were doing. I don't know, but... there are some things that could have been strengthened effects-wise. There is some character development that could have been... that were left off the table. Like I said, I would like to see more Michael York kind of come to terms that renewal might not be a thing at all. That nobody's ever been reborn, and he's killed people, he's killed runners. Maybe a bit of guilt because of that, a bit of... wishing he never did it, wishing things were different. I think, like I said, some character development could have been incorporated in there. The finale, maybe make it a little bit more of a challenge. Maybe the robot, maybe something that has been done a while, but it has some kind of defense system, like defense mechanism that never thought he would have to use. So maybe some kind of robotic stuff that he would have to shoot. Also, let the gun shoot some fucking lasers. Don't just let it be he does this, nothing comes out, and it's like... It just looks ridiculous. It looks like... maybe people felt, well, you don't technically see... if it's going so fast, would you be able to see it kind of like a bullet? Like if you slow it down, of course, but... if someone shoots you usually don't see the actual bullet go through the air. So maybe that's what they're going for? I don't know. Or it's cheaper this way. But overall, I do like Logan's Run. I would say this, look up the trailer. The trailer intrigues you. Go for it. But yeah, at least it doesn't end on some stupid note. There's no PC bullshit. It just... I had fun with Logan's Run. I have issues with it, but I had fun. So that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.